Hey guys, how's everyone doing? I got to play Babylon's Fall recently, and I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised with everything that's going on with the game, despite my initial worries about the systems. So, what is Babylon's Fall? This game is a multiplayer RPG for 4 players set in the Babylonian Empire, where you control a warrior that basically goes through this desolate world that was under control by the Domitian Empire and other outside forces that is able to use power called Gideon's forces. Now, what is Gideon forces? The 5 weapons, quote unquote, and I say five, I say quote unquote because there's actually only 4 weapons in the game that you basically utilize for your character, and they're able to do different functions as well as have different actions depending on the weapon you have equipped. For instance, you can have a sword, a hammer, and a shield all in one, and you can switch these out freely. You can have your sword for your heavy attack, and you can have a hammer for your light attack, or you can switch it. You can have a hammer for your light attack and a sword for your heavy attack. Now, the way these things work is actually very interesting. Instead of just basically having a preset and setting it up and being able to use the same weapon in the slot, you have to have a weapon equipped in a certain slot. There is 4 slots, and you can only have 4 weapons equipped at a time. There is no extra sets. Hopefully, something I think they will change in the future where you can have a second set of like weapons kind of on the side by hitting a directional pad right or something. But yeah, there is 4 slots. It is a so you can just basically have 4 swords if you want. Is there any perks to having 4 weapons? There is a perk to having 3 shields. I don't know if there's any other perk for having 3 swords or 3 hammers or 2 hammers or anything like that. I don't think that's the case, but there might be. Maybe I don't know. Now, initially, I was very worried about how the weapons would interact with each other. Since they're so very different, like the hammer and the sword, just one very fast-paced, small, one very slow, heavy. But it actually feels incredibly good. When you use a light into a heavy, there's always a combo attack that you get, at least for melee weapons. I'm not sure about the ranged weapons if there is a combo attack involved in that. So if you use a light and you go into a heavy, it's always going to do a specific action that you can only get by doing those 2 combinations, to my knowledge. Like I said, I'm not sure about the ranged weapons. They function a little bit differently than melees. I think the biggest problem right now with the game is that with a system like this, you need multiple weapons. Currently, right now, we are very much lacking, like like a weapon variety, which is what we need in a game where you could rapidly switch weapons. And there's plenty of weapons they can add. And since it is a live service game, honestly, I think their plan is to add more weapons in the game. I'm hoping for a great sword. Obviously, I'm a great sword maniac, but I could see like a spear, like a dagger, maybe like a sickle and chain, a ball and chain. That'd be cool too. A scythe. I could see plenty of different things they can utilize, especially with the way the game works. There are abilities on these weapons too. You can charge these abilities when you're attacking. So this game will mostly be pressing multiple buttons at the same time. Like you'll press them, heavy attack. You can press the light attack separately, and then you'll also be pressing at the same time one of your spectral attacks, which is basically what you're going to be. And there's also other interactions with certain weapons, like the sword has a charge up mechanic, so the more you hit, the faster you attack, and the more damage you basically kind of get if you just keep attacking. And there's different interactions depending on the mode that you're in, which aren't actually in the game. There's actually 3 type of modes. There's a standard mode, there's a power mode, and there's a technical mode. Standard mode is just your basic attack mode. It's what every weapon has. Power mode is what only certain weapons have, which I'm assuming are just going to be melees, and they're going to have the ability to just be very slow but very powerful and very leave you defenseless. It's basically like using a heavy attack, except all your abilities are going to be that, I assume. Like I said, they didn't put it in the closed beta, so unfortunately we weren't able to experience that. I was very upset. But I think that's really going to clean up the systems in the game, because I feel like it would get a little stale even with the Gideon arms and the weapon switching if there wasn't another feature, and having a different system of attacking definitely will make it feel more unique and more interesting, especially if they add more weapons in the game, which, like I said, I'm hoping they're going to do soon. Um, now, in now, in terms of the other mode, the technical mode, this is just a combo mode. I don't know how this works at all. All I know is it's easier to weave in combo attacks, and it also changes the way your Gideon arm works. Only certain weapons will have it, which I'm assuming again is just melees. Maybe the range, maybe the bow will have one. I don't think the rod would be able to do this. But like one of the interactions is if you hit your Gideon arms at the right time, which is your special skill, your spectral attack. After doing a certain combo, it changes the way the Gideon arm works. and things like that, little interactions like that. So this is a very big game changer that we weren't able to experience. I'm a little worried that one of the core mechanics of fighting in the game was taken out in the closed beta, considering I do not believe they're going to do another closed beta. I don't know if that's true. They might do an open beta that's going to be wiped, but to my knowledge, this is the last closed beta before release. And like I said, if a core mechanic in the game is not in the game on release, that's just for fighting, then that is very worrisome because we're only basically playing like part of the game. Without that system, we don't know the full scope of how the combat system is going to work. Even with that, though, this combat system right now is very good. I can understand why people wouldn't like it and it get really stale for people, especially if they only want to use one weapon. The special attacks can change. So, for instance, if you can see here, one of the spectral attacks was a giant field you put down. I don't actually know what it does. They didn't explain it at all. But the other spectral attack is a giant energy blast when you charge it up, which they showed in the closed beta presentation, and it does a enormous amount of damage. And I'm talking a huge amount. It's basically a nuke. It takes the longest to charge up out of all the spectral attacks for the rod, but it is disgusting. I would never see a use to use the small enchanted field versus the energy ball, which is what they're called. They all have specific names. Now, I only saw different spectral attacks for the ranged weapons. The bow had 3, the rod had 2. I didn't see any more yet. I'm still kind of playing the beta. I've already done all the missions in the game, but yeah, there's only for the range weapons so far. I'm hoping they're going to add more for the melees, and I'm assuming that's going to be the case considering they're all named. They don't just have like, they're not just like weapons and they're just in the weapon. They're all named attacks. So like, there's giant stop and there's phantom slash for melees, and then there's energy ball for rod as well as enchanted field. And for bow, there's piercing shot, splitting shot, piercing shot, and rapid shot. The shield really has no purpose in the beta. There's no enemies that threaten you enough to want to parry or use a shield. So currently, I think the shield is the biggest weapon that needs a rework. Honestly, I think they should just throw a sword in there and it be a sword and shield. There's zero reason to have just a defensive shield. Like, I know they want it to be like an RPG and you play your role and like be a defense, but like you sitting there only with the shield to me is just not worth it, especially because the practicality of it doesn't really do much for you. You can get different buffs off of enchantments, but it still doesn't warrant using a shield considering the beta didn't offer any enemies that require it. Now I'm assuming, since going by the trailer, I'm assuming that there's going to be enemies that are a little bit more tough so that you have to utilize a shield and like even 3 shields to deflect projectiles, because in the trailer you're fighting a lot more fierce enemies. But in the beta, we only had one boss, and there was no real reason to use a shield against him, to my knowledge. Like, nothing really stopped him from, the shield didn't really mitigate that much damage, and he still would destroy you, and he was able to CC me, and all this other stuff. Speaking of boss fights, though, boss fights, like I said, there was only one boss in the beta, which was pretty disappointing after 6 levels. Hopefully this is not going to be actually in the base game, because 6 of these levels were basically, it was basically 3 levels and then 3 repeat levels at a higher difficulty. That's essentially what it was, right? It just went from, 1 power to 4 power to 7 power to 20 power to 30 power to 40 power. It just escalated like that, and it was literally 3 levels all the same, and then 3 levels of repeat basically with a little bit shifted up areas with the exact same enemies and the exact same ending. The exact same boss was in the 5th level as was the 2nd level. It was pretty disappointing personally. But I'm hoping this is just because it's a closed beta test. They're trying to like just test out, a little bit of the servers, and they're also trying to test out the systems and have us flush it out. Now, in terms of the graphical style, honestly, I really enjoy it. I think for some reason the in-game resolution when you're in-game just looks awful on the characters. For some reason the characters look a little bit weird. The world already looks a little washed out. That's kind of the art style they're going for. And honestly, I'm down for the aesthetic. I think it looks really good. I know they're trying to tell a specific story in a specific style, so it doesn't need to look like, next generation amazing, beautifully colored and like, saturated. But I actually really like this wash style, this brush stroke style. I'm very much a fan. Now, when it comes to the actual in-game models, like I said, it does look pretty bad. I don't know why the polygons are really weird. Even the hairstyle that I chose doesn't look like the hairstyle that I actually chose when I'm in the actual game versus the character selection screen. I don't know why the resolution for the characters is so low res. Hopefully they fix that by the end of the beta. Like I said, maybe that's just a little bit of a bug, which there are a few of them, but yeah. I'm not going to review anything about the story or the progression simply due to the fact that, like, not really due to the story or the actual progression outside of the leveling, simply due to the fact that it's a closed beta and we have no information on how that's going to work. And I assume they're going to keep it a secret until the game's actually out. I doubt there's going to be just like a bunch of repeat enemy levels. I'm assuming they're going to actually change it up and have more missions that aren't just like, 6 missions, that are just basically 3 missions, but like 3 lower level missions of the same and 3 higher level missions of the same. That would be pretty boring. I doubt that's going to be the case. Fingers crossed. Other than that, I mean, yeah, like I said, the hack and slash part though, if you just take out all the annoying parts, the hack and slash part is phenomenal. The combat system feels amazing. It felt clunky at first until I started using it. One of the biggest problems that I saw was aiming a little bit. Aiming does feel sort of weird. I don't really know why the aiming system, sometimes it whiffs your camera into a wall. Other times you kind of just like if you're free aiming with like a range weapon, you kind of just aim at a different enemy depending on where you're looking. It is a little bit funky and they probably need to fix that because you don't want to just lock onto the same enemy all the time because you can't really see a lot. I almost forgot to mention about the actual bow. So the bow actually has a specific spectral attack where you go into an aiming mode. It's really sick. It does a lot of damage and actually doesn't use the stamina. The stamina basically goes down whenever you use a spectral attack. No matter what the spectral attack is, if you press the spectral attack, it will use your stamina, which is the red bar at the top. But with the bow, you have this, you go into this aiming mode, which is really cool, and you actually get to free aim. You cannot lock on. You can lock on, but it doesn't help your shots. You have to free aim the attacks, and you do a mass amount of damage, and you actually can recover your spirit this way. It's a little unique mechanic to the bow. If you have a weapon that has a spectral attack on it, like I said, you can only have one spectral attack on at a time, and you press RB or LB depending on where it's equipped to actually use it, and or LT and RT, and you get to use the bow as basically like a free aiming thing. So if you like that kind of thing in the games where you get to go into like a proper third person shoot or closer to a first person, but like a third person shooting mode, well, the bow does offer that in one of its skills. You also cannot dodge infinitely. When you do dodge, you use your red stamina. So on the early levels, you also want to have at least half, I'd say, of the red bar because that bar does consume when you roll. I didn't notice that until the end of the beta. So every time I'd get stuck in a corner, I'd be like, why can't I roll? It was because I didn't have enough of spirit, is what it's called, to actually utilize that dodge. So your spirit is connected to your dodge as well as your techniques. So you want to have to manage that. Using lights and heavies give you back your stamina. Another broken thing was the hammer does siphon a lot with the heavy attack, so the hammer probably needs a nerf in terms of how much it can siphon because it seems like you can kind of just endlessly get your energy back for the most part and then instantly just spam your skills, which is pretty broken. Despite the hammer I feel like being not the best weapon ever. It's strong, it's slow, it's clunky, but it definitely gives you a lot of your spirit backs. Another thing was the camera view. It was really far away. I didn't like that, so I put it closer. It might have been a little bit too close for a lot of people, as you can see here. But personally, I preferred this over the really far away camera because the mid-range camera was extremely far away, and I couldn't really see my character that well. It wasn't really like that, it wasn't really that close to me, so I wasn't a fan. There's also when you end a quest, you can actually sell all your gear, but for some reason in the shop you can't do that. You have to sell it one by one, and you only have an inventory slot space of 500. I don't know if this is going to change in the main game, but hopefully they fix that as well because that is very strange. Randomly generated numbers for attacking isn't a thing either. When you attack an enemy, the attack lands and it does a static amount of damage, and the only way you can change that number is either by critting, which will always also be the exact same number that you see, or by boosting your damage with a certain material, whether it's through an enchantment or it's through a weapon buff. So, and speaking of enchantments, enchantments are basically what you're, depending on the rarity of gear, you get better enchantments. So purple rarities can have 3 or just 1 that's really good. I've seen 1 enchantment on a piece of gear and 3 enchantments on a piece of gear. And basically what these enchantments do is if you do a specific action, like dodging at the perfect time, you can gain increased crit rate, or if you take 1 damage, you can crit every single time on your basic attack but not your charge attacks, which by the way seems to be really broken considering if you just basic attack, you're basically just critting the entire time. And that did happen with me when I was utilizing the hammer. Every time I would use a basic attack, I would just crit, and even when I use a charge attack, it didn't take damage. It wouldn't reset it. It would just stay permanently in there. I would always crit no matter what. So that was pretty busted. Another busted mechanic, to my knowledge, is what they need to absolutely fix was the heavy attack. When you jump and heavy attack, you could basically CC most of the enemies in the game. Now, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was, considering the enemies will still hit you, and if you're a lower level, you'll still be killed. When you're in the air, you'll still get hit, you'll still be killed, you'll still be hit by things. But you can CC a lot of the enemies there that are a problem, especially if there's one left and you're trying to deal with them. You can just jump and CC them. Like I said, if they didn't remove this, I wouldn't even mind because I know the enemies are going to get a little bit more fierce and they will kill you at higher levels. But I do think that is broken. I think they need to fix the heavy attack because people are just going to spam that over and over again. Even though it's not the most optimal thing to do for damage, probably. You can do this with only with melees, the sword, and the hammer. But like I said, hopefully they fix this because it just seems a little bit busted when you're actually just spamming it over and over again. But it's not the end of the world, like I said, because you can die, and I have died doing it. Another thing that I had a problem with was just the gear. The gear looked okay in some cases, but like there is no transmog system. Hopefully on release there will be. But the gear in general, aside from the trailer gear looks amazing. But this gear that they gave us was pretty horrendous. There was no special gear they gave us. We just had horrible gear. Now, the level scaling of the gear did go over the 40 recommended power cap. I don't know what the cap is yet. I'm still, like I said, playing the beta. There's only like a day left of the beta, but the power level cap is 40 for the mission, but you can go way over it. I'm currently at 60. So, like, I'm 20 power over it. I'm pretty much breezing through the last mission. It's still somewhat difficult. I'm still using potions, but it's not the hardest thing in the world. Speaking of potions, the consumables in the game currently, you get 5 potions per run, and like currently right now you cannot restock the potions, which to me is very strange. You just can't restock potions. I don't know why that's a thing. I feel like you should easily be able to restock them, but I guess that they just didn't add that in the game. So yeah, currently right now you get 5 potions and that's it. And if you use them all, you basically die. Now when you die, you can resurrect and use a revive depending on how you died. But if your teammate revives you, it doesn't consume a revive. So if you die and your teammate revives you in time, you don't consume a revive. So basically you have endless lives. In this specific mode, you have endless lives, at least in the story mode. But like I said, your team can revive you. Your teammate can revive you, so don't fret. As long as and there was really just room to always get a revive off. There's no bar to indicate how close you are to getting revived. But you want to get usually just want when your teammate goes down, you usually just want to get them up, just because like you save a revive and you don't have to like panic revive them when they do die and you can't get them. But yeah, so the revive system, like I said, pretty free. You can just revive all the time. I'm assuming this is going to change in other end game modes, considering they're going to have multiple game modes. Like there's going to be like an end game trial mode where you only have 3 lives, and if you die, you can't get revived by your teammate. Probably. Like I hope that's the thing to make it a little bit more challenging, but we'll see. Now, one of the biggest problems with the beta is that nothing was explained. I had to go on different sites to see what the moves were, why my moves were doing certain things. I didn't know what any of the Gideon arms that were different for the ranged weapons did. I didn't understand anything because they didn't explain anything. You basically got into the world, they didn't even tell you where to go. You had to find the quest board, which is right in front of you, but you had to find that quest board, basically just start missions, and they had no direction whatsoever. Obviously, this is Dark Souls. You can say it's Dark Souls S. There's no direction, but I would like a little bit of direction considering it was supposed to be an action 4-player lobby based RPG. I didn't know any of the vendors. There's a vendor you can buy gear from, which will always be scaled down, but I basically treat that as transmog because it'll always be level 50. The gear doesn't matter as much as the weapons. So attack power is also the king. Nothing is better than attack power, even with better enchantments. Most of the time, if you have like a white with higher attack power, you want to grab that over the enchantment based one, unless the enchantment is like max crit or something like that. There's also 3 elements in the game, but there is no elemental weapons in the game, so we never got to experience that either. So that's a little unfortunate because I wanted to see how they interact and if the weapons like change their function at all with weapon elements, because certain enemies can be weak to fire, ice, or lightning, which are the 3 elements. But we didn't get to see that, sadly. Um, currently the weapons that need a giant overhaul. The bow is fine. I don't like the bow basic, but the bow is great. Um, and the heavy is amazing, and the charges are amazing. The bow feels really good, feels like a really good range weapon. Kiting is a little, I feel like it's not the easiest thing. The aggressiveness of the enemies is pretty good. I think there needs to be more spread out because there's a hate mechanic where you could CC as the hammer and then you can just let your range kind of blast. But the boss kind of just does whatever he wants for the most part. I don't know if the hate mechanic really works in the boss, fully. But the boss was pretty easy to kill as a ranged as well. It was pretty easy to kite him. So hopefully they have a little bit more aggressive enemies. They're gonna have more range blast enemies and bigger enemies. I'm assuming that's gonna be fixed. But the mobbing is kind of hard with the range. I went in with just a bow basically, and it was pretty difficult. There's no partying in the beta, which they're gonna add on release, is what they said. Yeah, character creation was pretty normal. It wasn't that good, to be honest. I didn't even know there was character creation, so honestly, it was a pleasant surprise. I thought you were just kind of picking a character and that was it. No, you get to create your own character. You can pick any gender. You can use any hairstyle from that gender. You can pick male or female for any class, which you do have classes with specific skills. I didn't get to use any of the specific skills either. I don't know if it was I chose Agravian or Agavian. I don't know what it's called. I don't know if the other classes actually utilize their skills. Like the base first class has some kind of leap, and the second class has a different skill as well, and a corruption skill. I have no idea if those skills are actually present in their class because mine was a siphon, and I did siphon a lot of energy. Maybe that's why, but yeah, I have no actual idea if you can use your class skill. There's no button for it though, so I assume no. Overall, the beta really brightened my view on the game. I'm very excited for it. With the combat system being so free, hopefully they add new weapons, and even like if it releases like this, like I said, I'm pretty okay with it. I can't wait for the the power stance, the technical stance, and the standard stance to just be like implemented in the game properly, where the weapons have access to those. But that will definitely add some more depth to the combat, and in general the combat right now feels really good. The hit detection is really good. The enemies feel really good to fight. A little fixes for the broken mechanics like the jump heavy, but other than that, the aggro mechanic is pretty good. Like, there's definitely, the game was made for 4 people, so you definitely don't want to solo things. I was able to solo everything after I got the gear, but before that, it was very difficult to go into a new quest and get new gear. One of the biggest things as well is that you can go into previous quest and basically farm gear. Hopefully that's not, but like there's a cap. There's a cap. I'm not sure if it was because the host was way lower than me or because we were doing an early game mission, but like I went to a previous mission and the cap ended up being 40. I couldn't get level 50. I couldn't get over level 40 gear, even though I have level 60 gear in that previous mission. So I didn't go back and solo it. I'm assuming that's the case. You can't get, certain gear past a certain level in those previous quests. But like I said, this is the closed beta. We don't know how the structure is going to work whatsoever. But other than that, like I said, I mean, the game is looking really, really good. It does need more time in the oven, I'll say. I definitely think that it needs to, to iron out some bugs and some systems and add some systems in place. I don't think it needs another beta personally, though. I think they can launch the game just like this, basically, with the fixes that I recommended in general. Because the format feels amazing. This is definitely a day 1 buy for me. So if you're looking for this, that's my personal opinion. Like I said, if you like the combat look and the style and the feel, then I'd say just try it out, pick it up. The closed beta is currently going on right now. Still, it's going to end in about a day, so we have a little bit more time with it. I'll see if I find any more information on the game, but this is definitely something I'm looking to cover in the future. And hopefully, since it's a live service, we're going to get a lot more new weapons and areas and according to them, different game modes. I'm very excited for this game. It does seem like it has a bright future. I'm hoping it's not dead on release because no one's really playing the beta at all. Everyone's kind of just skipping it, but to me, it looks quite amazing. So I can't wait. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.